the two buildings at Dixon Avenue, 4, 6, 10, 14, that front on, occupied by the CDFA, and behind Remy's building that front on Loudon Road, the parking lot in between, that's going to be another application, and then the Eagle Hotel. And the reason we have a time deadline, this project sort of fell in our lap because of the vagaries of the New Market Tax Credit Program. There was an allotment available that wasn't on the provision that we be able to close the project and meet a time deadline. The buildings in this area are no longer eligible for New Market Tax Credit. In fact, there won't be another New Market. The same was true of Concord Theater. If it didn't close here before August 1st, it will never get New Market Tax Credits because the census tract has now crossed an income threshold. But because it left a lot of projects that were in transition, the government came up with basically a bonus year that said if the census tract was no longer eligible, but you completed a project within the next year, then even though it's no longer eligible, you could get the credit. So we've been cramming about a year and a half worth of work into 5 months because once these credits became available, we then found we had the ability to purchase the Eagle Hotel and put together a significant project. So it involves a redevelopment of both what I call the CDFA building, 1014, the building to the north that's right behind Remy's, complete reconfiguration of the parking lots that don't work, and that'll come back again another day, and then a substantial redoing of the Eagle Hotel, which has been about 50% vacant for 8 or 9 years. Part of that is the state of New Hampshire is actually making a commitment to downtown. They were here with all their agencies until when was Judd Governor? 89, and they all left downtown and went up to Chanel Drive and some of the metal buildings. This is the first state agency, other than the core ones of the Attorney General and the Secretary of State and the ones that are housed in the annex, to come back downtown. The new Department of Economic Affairs is going to be the key tenant in the Eagle Hotel, so that whoever's governor can walk a prospective business person across the street. So what we are here tonight, and so we have to close this transaction by August 1st. You can't close the transaction unless you have a building permit. You don't get a building permit unless you have a planning board approval and ADR approval. So Rich was right, the ADR went on for an hour and a half, and basically they said there's nothing here that offends us, there are things we'd like you to come back on. We're going to recommend that you get your ADR approval, go to your planning board, get your planning board approval, and the city said, great, we'll give you a building permit, but a condition of the building permit is you will not get a certificate of occupancy until you come back, because there are going to be more details than you folks will want to deal with even tonight.
And recognizing that that's a little odd, you guys are
Yes.
side.
Yes.
Okay. I mean, maybe not fine with it.
Yeah,
I mean, not fine probably, but it's probably
Best we
it
can
is
do.
what it is.
It is what it is. And so we're going to talk about parks and facades.
And I guess we'll do this the old-fashioned way unless
Wow,
we can,
can't get it working, huh?
Wow.
What's the theme with you guys? Because it didn't work in ADR either.
I didn't touch it.
Jeez.
How we get?
It worked fine for the
So-
theater, by the way.
To just
Go ahead, that's
elaborate-
fine.
to
We've
elaborate
got
on-
the sheet, so if you can just tell us.
Sure. I guess to elaborate on Steve's point, to kind of explain this somewhat unusual procedural posture we're in and what we're asking of you. Yeah, so we need a building permit in order to close on financing by the end of the month, failing which there is no project. We explained that to ADR, and I understand the planning board has a very different role, and we asked ADR, we did little p planning with these plans.
Okay, what's the reason that everything is in this as one project? So I get the Eagle Square facade, the Dixon Ave and the Gateway Park on Store Street. Is there a reason that it's all together other than it's one project? That's probably the reason, but is it that the reason that they're all presented to us as one unique big project?
Well, there is. It's one project from an ownership standpoint, from a financing standpoint, from a development, from a construction contract standpoint. Essentially what you see before you are the 6 components of this overall project that require architectural design review and no more.
Gotcha.
From you. We'll see you in August for a major site plan
Sure.
on some parking lot reconfiguration. So basically, because we are in the CBP, these 6 things come to you. And they otherwise, you wouldn't see them otherwise.
Yeah. Got it.
So they're before you because they're in at important addresses. So we'll do it the old-fashioned way.
Maybe not.
How are we doing?
So far, so good.
I'm still, yeah.
If Sam can find that. So,
Person three is on the,
so thankfully, I had these printed out beforehand. So these are 20 slides that I'll show you. They're numbered, so if anybody has a question, just look on the lower right, and there's the number. So we'll slide 2. This is the overall site. In yellow, you can see 1 Eagle, 6 Dixon, and 14 Dixon are the buildings that we're purchasing. In the blue are these 2 lots. We call them the Dixon lot and the Stores lot. They come with the Dixon buildings. That will be the primary parking for all of these buildings. And then these green areas in front of 1 Eagle, we call it Eagle Plaza, between Loudon Road and the Dixon buildings and Remy's building. We call that is the city's Dixon Avenue right-of-way. We call that the Gateway Park. And then lastly, this little piece to the right of 14 Dixon, I call that the Dixon Plaza. Those parcels are all owned by the city of Concord and pursuant to a development agreement that the council approved 10 days ago. We'll be improving the Gateway Park and the Eagle Plaza essentially for our own benefit in that we own these buildings immediately adjacent to them, but for the benefit of the city of Concord and the public. There are no restrictions on use. These are public spaces. The Dixon Plaza is a 0.05 acre lot that's being sold to us and will be developed, and you'll see the plans as sort of a nicely landscaped area.
John, on the Gateway Park, does the Gateway Park go all the way up to Main Street?
It does. And you'll see plans for that in a sec. So just quickly to walk you through, slide 3 is 1 Eagle as it exists in a representative storefront. Slide 4 is the sidewalk in front of, oh my gosh.
Which one do you want? No, you can't do it this way, 2 arrows, so slide 4.
There's the man.
Go that way.
Okay, what a guy.
Hey, I got my picture up.
There's 1 Eagle.
Brings his own laser pointer.
It's the same. Why is the thing bigger?
So there's
Wow.
Yeah, it's green.
1 Eagle, as you can see, 4 non-accessible storefronts. You know, sort of the one building that got missed in the Main Street project. And there are reasons for that, including some structural issues in the basement that we have to resolve. But
Thank you for mentioning that, because it wasn't like that it was forgotten.
and there was the owner at the time
Was unresponsive.
Not Brady Sullivan, his predecessor, was asleep at the wheel, and I don't think cared about Concord's Main Street, as evidenced by the fact that they parted with all their buildings in the state of New Hampshire.
It's a nice current
Which one do you want?
There we go. So there's that's 6 Dixon, the front facing Loudon Road, the back from the parking lot. Next slide, please.
All right, there we go.
There's 8 Dixon, the front from Loudon Road. This is the elevation from Store Street. And then this is sort of some of this Gateway Park area that you'll see. Next slide. That becomes the Gateway Park. This is from the stairs as you walk down to Store Street, looking all the way back to Main Street. There's Main Street. And this is just a close-up of what you see as you get there. A couple of dumpsters and sort of a forlorn park. And then this is the Dixon Plaza area, 7 parking spaces sort of stuck between the building and Store Street. We actually own about that much of it already. We'll get about that much more. Okay. So there are 6 ADR items, 3 building elevations, so 1 Eagle, the 1 Eagle elevation changes, the 6 Dixon elevation changes, the 14 Dixon elevation changes, and then 3 landscaped areas, the Eagle Plaza, what we're doing in front of Eagle, the Gateway Park area, and then that Dixon Plaza. So this is what we're proposing for 1 Eagle. Essentially, we are creating we are replacing the storefronts with, and we are installing a an elevated walkway that provides accessibility to the building itself and to the 4 storefronts. And we do that using materials, you know, the vernacular, as ADR says, all the granite and whatnot, using the Main Street design. And there's access supplied from this side. There was discussion at ADR about why we didn't do it on this end, and the reason is that we can't achieve a compliant slope down to the next storefront entrance.
John, go ahead. But
I have a question. There's something I think I misunderstood every time I've looked at this, and maybe you can clarify for me. Is this area, is this right here, is this a hardscape on the ground? Or
Yeah.
is there something projecting over this space from the building? Because you heard you mention of something projecting over.
Well,
and I'm
one
not
of the
sure.
facade elements, and that's actually on the next slide, but we propose a canopy
Mhm.
there,
It's
which is
it's not appearing on this plan, right?
correct, because
It's not
this was
there.
really just a landscape architect's plan. But yes, this canopy, which looks sort of like that, you know, on the Bagel Works Plaza, will project over the new walkway section. We leave, if you can back up 1 sec, Steve. Actually, come one. So, if you look, that's One Eagle in front. There's the brick section with all the trees and whatnot, then there's sort of 2 sidewalk sections. What we are showing extends to this middle line, and only that middle line. We leave this section, what we call sort of the bypass sidewalk, so that pedestrians who don't wish to visit One Eagle are not forced to sort of up onto our elevated walkway. They can simply bypass. And part of our development agreement, the city requires us to maintain that width, which places some design limitations on us.
Thank you.
So that's what it looks like. It leads to One Eagle has this colonnade in front. So this is kind of this interesting plaza area. So the right of way is here, but this plaza sort of extends under the actual canopy of the building itself. So it creates this nice sort of, you know, indoor-outdoor-ish space. Next slide, please. That's just a little bit more technical version of what you saw. One of the discussions that some people on ADR brought up, but I don't think it was a consensus view, was we have all these stairs leading up to the storefronts. Why not just, why have so many stairs? Why not just sort of have a single entrance point here and then the ends? And we said, well, we were a little bit concerned about this being kind of a narrow path to the storefronts. And one of the comments was, well, make this a more, make this the more prominent sidewalk and push it this way so that it is wider and doesn't feel like that. The problem is then we run into our development agreement, which says we cannot cross, we have to leave that 5-foot bypass sidewalk, so we have a little bit of limitation.
But they were saying to narrow the other elements. They weren't saying to bypass the 5 foot. They were saying to narrow the blocks and the benches and all that
Right.
stuff.
We have about 6 feet in total to work with. And, right, there was talk about narrow these blocks, which we will look at doing, but there are only so many inches we have to work with.
Just so I don't forget, I kind of agreed with that comment because I think it might look cleaner if maybe the steps that are near the main one that goes up to Eagle.
Yep.
Get rid of those and just have the 1 steps rather than the 1 and the 2, and then have that be a cleaner front. Because you could walk around, I mean, the other
Yeah.
ones are so close to the access for the sidewalk.
Right.
That-
One of the things that we looked at with the landscape architect afterwards, and our feeling was if we could eliminate these 2 and have a single one at this point and also on this point, we'd be inclined to do that. The problem is this walk would be at the ramp area, which we can't do. So
Right.
we are,
I think you could eliminate 1, or, I mean, 2, so that you would have, instead of having 1, 2, 3,
So
4,
this is a
5,
detail.
have 3.
this is a detail that will come
Yeah.
back to ADR and you on. And one piece of input that we want in the interim is to talk to the actual storefront, the merchants, and try to get their input on that.
Do you mind if I add one more
Yep.
element? So one thing that our engineering noticed is that these are in front of the entrances, and since it's only 5 feet wide, there was concern that if someone was using a wheelchair, that they might catch this and tumble over, and so eliminate these two and put one in the center. So I think they might have been open to that idea. The only problem is that that doesn't work in this scenario, because what you have between the two storefronts is the ramp, and there's no other place for that ramp to go. So that solution might work here, but then you have a non-symmetrical sort of solution.
Right.
So what I would offer is the input of the actual merchants in these stores is it will be important to us. If they are on board with, yeah, fine,
Right.
just, on the ends and the middle,
Well, and there's all parking in front, right?
Yeah.
there's angled parking, yes.
Yeah, so I mean, I don't think the symmetry really matters, because you're not going to really perceive it that much as you're walking down because of the cars and everything else there. But I think eliminating some will make it just cleaner, and you know that in the winter, all those access points are probably not going to get plowed anyway. So if you could concentrate on the main one and maybe one on each side, but you've got time to think about it, obviously.
Mr. Chairman, may I ask a
Yes,
question?
sir.
as well? While you have these slides up, and I gather you haven't spoken to the merchants yet, but I'm wondering if they're going to have any concerns, like Brown Bag Deli or particularly Revelstoke when they open, whether there'll be any concern about sidewalk dining, sidewalk tables, things like that.
Yeah, so, I mean, on that point,
Yeah, luck.
I mean, right
well,
now, Brown Bag.
there
doesn't have
are
any-
spaces on the brick section that would be available
Okay.
in front of Brown Bag. It might require moving some mailboxes to a different location in front of Revelstoke. The other thing I would note, though, is that they now have access to this substantial indoor plaza that we will make available for seating for
Gotcha.
those businesses. And frankly, there's this spectacular, 2,000 square foot lobby with sofas and all kinds of stuff. So that actually is nice seating for customers of these businesses too. So I think they come out ahead.
Thank you, John.
You should mention about the detail on the storefronts will look like down below granite.
Yep. So now we get to the elevation of One Eagle. First of all, nothing changes above this line. And below this line, all that really changes is we strip a bunch of signs off this granite band. We really turn this into a very Mark Zabrowski looking building, to be honest. I mean, when we looked around, we said he's actually
Let's hope he's not watching.
I mean, I told Mark, we're stealing your idea. I mean, we really.
It's the highest form of flattery.
It looks great.
There are a
too.
lot of buildings in downtown Concord that actually have this sort of granite lintel band,
Yeah.
granite posts, structural, and then interrupted by these, structural decorative cast iron columns. And Mark owns a bunch of those buildings. He sort of gutted out the old store, and when you look at pictures of One Eagle, it's changed. I mean, they started renovating it the day after it opened. There's nothing original left. I mean, these are the 8th generation of storefronts that look nothing like the 7th or the 6th. So out they come, and we put in new, clean, energy-efficient storefronts like Mark has done. Pick a nice color scheme that will make those columns pop. Our interior designer said black storefronts, always classy. Got the gold dome. Let's go gold on the column. So we end up, frankly, ripping off Mark's idea of VegaWorks. Looks great, I think, and that it's gonna it'll look a heck of a lot like that. We are stuck with this colonnade and arches. Not my favorite thing, but they're structural. We have to live with them, and part of the purpose of the canopy is to sort of make a prominent entrance statement and try to mute those non-original arches a little bit. ADR's one sort of comment on this was I think they basically liked it. They wanted to see the actual dimensions of this canopy, which looks a lot like, it's a canopy like this. It serves no purpose of actually keeping rain off or snow off people's heads because you walk into the building and the building will serve that function. So it'll have louvers like this that just let the elements fall through. They're hung by these sort of decorative hanger rods with, diamond-shaped, the escutcheons, what plates, that sort of look like these plates that you see on old brick buildings to keep them from spreading apart.
Why not make it more Waldorf Astoria type portico out in front?
Well, let me tell you how that works down at the Smile Building. When you put those there, they're hard to maintain.
Yeah.
Unless you build drainage into them, they're very hard to maintain. And we did it down at Smile, and it does keep it, but if you look up under Smile, we have to clean, it's glass, we have to clean it once every 2 weeks. I mean, it's a pain in the neck, and then even the best designed ones seem to gather water unless you come up with a system to drain it away.
So are you using those as elements to draw attention to the entrance rather than as functional
Right,
cover?
right.
Yeah, to try to
hide
create
the
some
arches.
massing that sort of focuses you on the entrance.
And
then,
hide the arches.
The main stairs are here. It's a,
And all this is in the public right away, the whole
Yep.
the whole project, right?
it's
Well, the whole.
It's kind of a
part the
boring building in some ways. I mean, this is a nice backdrop, I think, as long as you do something reasonably interesting down here. And we're limited in the elements that we can play with, and that canopy was one of the things that as we look
Good
down
with
Main
some
Street.
external lighting on it.
And lighting is not, will be part of
I know.
a later
I know.
application. It's not, we didn't bring a lighting package to
No, I'm good. No.
ADR.
Sorry, move on.
But that is a good suggestion. You can take a pretty plain brick
Absolutely.
facade
Make it look
that's got a
beautiful.
putty-colored window that we can't rip out and change, and do some uplighting that you maybe build into the base of the granite.
So the lighting
walkway.
plan is likely to include, lights in these little arched windows up above, some sort of uplighting on the old Granite Eagle Hotel.
There's no overhang either, is there, to highlight? There's no,
No.
There's nothing that hangs out that you can uplight, that's the problem.
There is
Isn't really any,
There is a cornice?
dent
Yeah.
brick detail that would create nice shadow lines. So, then on to 6 Dixon. So the use in 6 Dixon, one of the CDFA-owned buildings, the bottom 2 floors are occupied as office, the Lantos Foundation and Resilient Buildings Group. This floor was fitted up as office space, has essentially been vacant forever, in large part because it's not an accessible floor. It's a small building, there's no elevator in the building, so it's sat vacant forever. The top floor, is sort of half renovated and stopped. So our redevelopment plans include putting 5 apartments on this floor and 2 on this floor. And in terms of ADR elements, we are replacing the front door which was a black door that didn't match the sort of aged copper look of the windows. So we're essentially pulling that out. We are removing, sorry to bounce around. We are removing this ugly vestibule and putting in a new door that's not black but matches the color of the windows.
What is that? Why is that like that?
Their idea of a vestibule when they did the original redevelopment.
For the only reason to just give you a spot to come up and,
I mean, it does provide
Stop and then turn into
an
the building?
airlock. Will provide a vestibule
Well, yeah.
internally rather than externally.
wow.
So other than that, basically.
You're keeping the stairs there, though.
Yeah, we will, we keep the stairs there and sorry to keep bouncing around. And we, as an amenity for the 7 apartments, there are 7 balconies. They, unlike any of the ones that have created brouhahas downtown, these extend over our own property. There is no license required from the city of Concord.
Amen.
So, does not involve the council.
You answered
Just-
my question
Yeah, I
before
was
I
gonna
asked.
say,
ADR's one point was, geez, they look like they stick out a little bit far, and which is 3 feet. And our response to that was, as long as you can fit a couple of chairs and a bistro table,
It's
we'll
perfect.
shrink it to 1 inch. But, we probably don't have a lot to give up before we lose that important function.
And that top left drawing is facing Center Street?
This, this faces
Up.
Loudon Road, so we
Loudon Road,
we
Loudon
have the
Road.
symmetry,
Not
and we
Center.
take this detail, which I'll show you, we'll look at it again, but balconies will look like that, and we take this railing and mesh detail, and we, install it here too.
Perfect.
Steve will hate to hear it, but we'll be boring. I mean, they'll be black and all that.
Not boring.
I think they should be colorful, but that's me.
I know,
Like
I know.
guardrails.
Right. Why not some colorful balcony, a boring brick building?
Like what color do you want? Or do you want multiple colors?
I'd do multiple colors to make the building stand out there. They're two of the most, there's so much red brick. Ugh.
I don't completely disagree with
Heather?
that.
So ADR did want to know more about the dimensions, materials, installation method, so they had a lot of questions
Yep.
about the balconies.
Okay.
So this is one of the
Okay.
elements, and this will be, these things are prefabricated, powder coated, they make them in Iowa and they ship them here, so we've got time to, this will be one of the very last
One of
things
the
that
items that you look
happens.
at on ADR side, okay?
I mean, it's important that there be 7 balconies, they need to fit a little table and chairs.
Did a deal on some LED signage right there too, probably.
Yeah. And now on to 8 to 14 Dixon, which is the building that's fronts on Store Street. So this is the front elevation. Very little has changed. Again, we just pull out the doors that are black that to us don't match the rest of the existing windows, and we put in new door systems that have a similar color to the existing windows. We pull out a couple of doors and replace them, infill these brick areas and install new windows because we don't need that many doors in our scheme. And then on Store Street down here, that is currently unoccupied storage space. That will be.
And, sorry, John, just for reference, the stairs are to the right.
That's right.
Correct.
Okay.
So we are looking at, this
Spot right
lower
there.
level.
Okay.
And the stairs, you can see them off to the right.
Go ahead, Heather.
Can you go back to that
Showing the
picture
stairs.
that you were just at for a moment? I
Picture?
just wanted to draw attention to another of ADR's comments. So you notice above the doors right now, there's the wide, clear glass. So if you
Upper
go back to your,
left-hand photo.
so if you go back to your, yep, right, those spaces. So you go back to your proposal. One of the comments that was made by one of the members was, so you'll notice the proposal, they've got all of
Divided.
they're matching the, mullions or partitions of the other windows, and they wanted it to just remain clear glass. So I don't know if anyone else has any feedback on that. I wasn't
So
sure.
instead of the, whatever, 12 over 12.
Yeah, they just
To match the
make
6
it-
over 6s, they want it just one
just one
piece of glass.
pane.
What's gonna be above there? Is there anything about, you're not gonna have the name of anything, or there's no office names or anything that are gonna be there?
It's just a transom window over the, operable doors.
So there'll be no sign there.
And
Be a number.
we don't want to infill it with a metal panel or anything like that.
Yeah.
It brings additional light into the lobby spaces.
I
Our feeling
like
is
the
just,
design.
it sort of matches the upper sashes. We didn't really see a reference in the building for.
I'm just curious what the board members think about
I
it.
like the design, I don't see any reason.
Me too. So ADR, I think it would look fine plain, because I think you're trying to turn like something, you're using detail for a window on a large door. So I don't think, I personally would not have any problem just making it a plain sheet of glass with, is that what ADR was talking about?
Yeah.
Rather than having the
Yeah.
articulated panes?
Correct. And I felt that I liked what they were proposing as well, but then you go back and you look at what the photo is, it looks normal and fine too, with it being just plain. So I just wondered what others
Well,
thought.
it begs,
Now
for
it's
it
plain.
would beg for some, signage, or beg for some
Yeah.
clean type signage up there, so.
And that may be, currently, they
Oh,
use
like
that.
this, right?
They do use that.
Right there.
I
So
mean,
that's, yeah.
That may have been
that's-
part of their
That
theory,
was-
is that they use that for signage. We have in mind a different signage. I mean, the signage package isn't for you, but we don't see using that space as,
So those windows are all getting changed, right?
And that door is-
no, these all stay. These two doors are removed and filled in with,
So what's the lights on those windows? Are those like 4/4? They don't even look like 2/2, are
I
they?
think they're 6/6.
Are they?
6/6, yes.
They are. Okay,
So I don't know.
okay, a good note on the ADR note. I could go either way.
Sorry.
So then,
Sing out if somebody's got a question.
you recall on this, so there's the stairs down from
Yeah.
our Gateway Park. These are overhead doors, falling apart garage doors. Sorry. Just to slightly skip you ahead 1 second. We landscaped this area out in front, and this is an elevated patio that looks like that. Elevated patio in front of the building and a lawn area. So this will be retail space. Initially, it'll be leased to Concord Antique Gallery. Tom Balin, who has plans to move Concord Antique Gallery and then redevelop that site. I think, frankly, looking ahead a decade, this is great restaurant space.
Restaurant space, yeah.
Almost had sort of a quite significant restaurateur take this space, and at the sort of last minute, they said, just build it. Plans are great, build it, and then we'll talk. So the theory of the patio really is, Tom, he just build it.
Just build some.
Build it.
Build it, maybe we'll use it.
Put a brick oven in there maybe, and just maybe we'll use it.
The point of the patio is to show it off as prove that it would be great restaurant. I mean,
Absolutely.
we keep stealing ideas from around Concord. I mean, it's really a Cheers patio.
John, can you just, and I know we're jumping around, I don't want to belabor the point, but can you just address the Concord ownership piece of this as far as the individual party properties go? So the parks, this area that's out here is city property. So you're going to develop it out of the goodness of your heart as a Concord person, and then that still remains as city property, maintained by by the city. Is that correct?
Not on this.
Not on
So
that.
the Eagle Plaza, we spend the money. It's the city's property. They maintain it.
From the building envelope out?
Right.
Okay.
This entire Gateway Park, I mean, is the city's right of way. We build it, we spend our money. I think we agree to maintain the plantings. If we didn't agree, we will do it because we want there to be
Plant them,
live
don't die.
trees.
So that means that-
We're installing irrigation systems in, the city's right of way.
So that
They
means
put
that
it on our meters.
anybody could hang out there.
It's a public space. I mean, certainly we benefit by owning 2 of the buildings that front on this space. It's a fantastic deal for Remy. It's great for the city of Concord. And I think just sort of master plan wise, when Store Street goes through to 393 in the Hotel and Conference Center, and this is really the single significant pedestrian connection between Main Street and Store Street. I mean, I think that will be a well-traveled way in the future. And there's, city also has a lot of parking capacity in this area that I think will be unlocked very shortly.
And incidentally, just to give you a little bit of update on that, the Store Street garage, the state keeps going back and forth. I just met with them last week because it's $600,000 a year they have to spend every year for the next 5 years to keep it open. That's $3 million. They have a report done, it's functionally obsolete, and they can keep putting 600 grand a year in to keep it open, but they are looking hard, quickly for other options. So they might
You're not
get rid
talking
of
about the
that.
city's Store Street garage.
No, I'm talking about the
Legislative- the
elevated, the
legislative-
legislative.
I just
garage.
wanted to
Yeah,
clarify
no,
that for
No,
people
our
at
Store
home.
Street garage, you're right, it's brand new, it's fine.
Thank you.
Needs more lights, but fine. But, I mean, that's very hopeful for Store Street is the next sort of developed street down there, and literally the only connection because of all those buildings is through Eagle Square or at the other end through Gateway Park building.
And then this Dixon Plaza, that's a .05 acre parcel, which is about as big as this elevated section. That is owned by the city, that will be conveyed for $145,000 to us. And that will be privately owned, and that plaza will be ultimately sort of the, I mean, the public will benefit from the beautification of it, but it'll be
The
for
Store
private
Street
use.
Plaza you're talking, right?
Right, this
little
one.
Yeah.
so-called
We'll own it,
Dixon Plaza.
maintain it.
Yep,
We'll install trees along the streetscape.
Yep.
Uh,
great restaurant. Great
We
restaurant
tried that
space.
argument.
Yep.
Build it, then we will come was
Great restaurant
upsell.
space.
So.
Hey, so go back to that one, sorry,
yeah.
go back one, sorry, and I know I'm
Green.
gonna ask a
That one?
question out of,
No,
no,
the green one.
The green, that one. So, not that there's anything wrong with the Remy's building, balconies, but
Hang over
in ADR had some discussions regarding that ramp, and I know
Right.
you had talked about a meandering ramp to mitigate the issues with getting there. Can we just request that the meandering ramp be outside of the fall zone for the existing balconies? So I don't want to put the meandering ramp right up next to the building where the people are going to meander down underneath those balconies if we don't have to. If we have to, we have to, but
We're going to.
you know what I'm
there-
saying? You know what I'm
this-
saying? If we can keep them outside of the area and
Yeah.
let the balconies have just grass under them, that would be
A couple slides from now, you'll see a meandering ramp.
Okay.
And the reality of the matter is that with ADA slopes, it's just a math problem. We're going to have certain portions of the walkway be under the balconies. You'll,
So the good news is it'll be ADA compliant, but
The bad
if
news is-
somebody flower pot comes off the balcony.
Can't get away from it. It's like an albatross around my neck.
Good news, bad news. Glass half full.
Yeah.
good point. If we can look at,
Escalators, no kidding. go
if we can reverse the switchbacks to avoid that issue, we'll.
If you can,
Good point.
just put it in the back of your mind, so, okay.
So I guess to go back, so elevation-wise,
Yeah.
these garage doors, first of all, they never got around to replacing any of the windows on this level, so we do that to match all the upper windows. And these three openings, we removed the existing overhead doors and we installed two door systems here that open out onto the patio. These also provide an accessible entrance because you come down the sidewalk here onto this ramp and come in. So we have now also, we have basically added accessibility to 4 storefronts on Main Street. We're adding accessibility to this entire floor. And you'll see we're providing accessibility through the
And there's
gateway
granite
park.
treatment above those garage doors that stays.
Yep, so these big lintels stay, and then this is a window that just sort of matches the pattern here.
Beautiful.
There's our Gateway Park. This Stores is down here, Dixon Avenue comes up and stops right there. And then this is a private alley back behind the Main Street buildings that we own, and which will, when we see you in August, we'll talk about adding parking spaces on this side of that. So this vehicular route has to remain as part of the whole park. So we've tried to soften it by, banding it with brick and things like that, but basically completely rebuild this park.
But that space that says 2 handicap spots for parking and
So-
drop off or quick
Right.
in and out or
Uh,
deliveries.
Basically, there's 1 handicap space in the lot down here, which does somebody who is handicapped about no good because it doesn't get you
Nowhere.
to any building. So this is a much better place to have handicap spaces. So that's why we create these 2 spaces here, because with the spaces here, they'll be, you can get from here into these buildings, and with the ramp that we create, up to Main Street. So, park area, I'll show you it.
So the park area that's on the right-hand side's in front of the existing building. What's the 5 years down the road, what do you envision that? You envision people sitting out there and having lunch? I mean, if you walked out of that building and looked dead straight across, are you looking at the bottom of the Loudon Road Bridge area, or are you looking at the big girder, or
No,
what's?
this is, you're looking at kind of a nice granite wall actually here. That's at about head height. And there's some plantings up above, and we buffered the wall also with new plantings.
Oh, yeah.
The bridge is over here.
Oh, I see, it's on the
Stairs right
image
there.
there, too.
So it's actually kind of a nice cloistered area. This will be a little seating area. we will get a license from the city to use that in the same way that, you know, merchants downtown get licenses to put their tables and chairs out there, but otherwise we don't have any particular rates. That's the Dixon Plaza area, again, sort of an elevated patio and a lawn area enclosed by a fence, and our, you know, it's a Cheers patio-like thing. Our landscape architect sort of said this reminds him of some good restaurant uses that he's been involved with, where there's sort of a patio, the adults can sit there, and there's a lawn that's fenced in, and you know, the kids can run around it. Well, you're waiting for dinner to come, and the parents feel secure because there's a fence. So that's the longer term plan. In the short run, just a nice space to look at. So then, here's sort of the official plan of this whole area, and this is reworked. I'll show you a more detailed version of that. So that area beside Remy turns into this sort of serpentine walk, and it will actually become more serpentine than this. This is a little bit angular, as Sam and I were talking before. We're actually turning into a serpentine walk that looks like Walter's Wiggles, which is the walkway that goes up Angel's Landing in Zion National Park. So the point is, and if you sort of Google this, the whole point is to make rather than trying to hide the accessible elements, is to turn them into the artistic element in the space. You know, to provide the accessibility, there needs to be a lot of feet of ramp, like 95 feet of ramp. The only way to do that is to jiggle it back and forth, so why not try to use the design of that to be the artistic statement. So it'll be like this, but frankly more
Curvilinear.
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 And the retaining walls will actually be sort of on the underside, so they, you know, I don't know if you can picture Carlsbad Caverns or any of these things where they just sort of wind like this, and when you're at the bottom looking up, you just see this sort of interesting crisscrossing of steps.
Is there ever a way of, like, let's say you wanted to get there more quickly? I mean, is there like, I mean, is there a way to have steps, like have like a more direct access for people who could take steps, or no?
And there'd
Just
be,
wondering.
we thought about that. There would really be, I'd say two things. One, there'd be nothing left, you know, to landscape.
Right.
And when I've seen pictures of how this is done well, it is the way that people just take a little bit of extra time and enjoy it. It just is.
Well, and when you're redoing it too, I mean, you could even have, like, at the curves, have it be like squared off so that you're, you know what I'm saying, that you're, sometimes those weird leftover spaces end up being just like dead. I mean, you could just have it, you know what I'm saying? Just,
You square up the corners?
yeah, I mean, you could just have a larger area where you I mean,
Yeah.
it could just change, and then that becomes more what you were talking about, is more of an experience and not necessarily a river. Anyway, I mean, as you're working on it,
Okay.
there are a lot of ways to not make it so tight
Yeah,
turns.
and this only gets us starting to where we want to go. It's a little bit too angular still.
Right.
Then I think what we'll.
Heather?
You should Google Chattanooga Museum ramp, because I think that one is probably more like what you want to do than the really severe Walter's Wiggles type thing that you're talking about.
Well,
It's-
that's like
It's
this.
landscaped and it's much more polished for an urban setting.
Yeah.
So you should just check that out, because
What is it, Chattanooga what?
the ramp, the museum on the waterfront,
Art Museum?
what's that?
Is it the Art Museum?
Yes, exactly. The art museum on the waterfront, they've got a curvilinear ramp, and it's like an attraction. You know, people go down it just to say they went down it. I mean, there's a
With a
walkway-
skateboard.
There's a walkway right next to it with stairs that you can go down, but everybody takes the ramp just to take the ramp. It's landscaped and it's.
It's like Lombard Street.
Yeah, it's here.
Oh, yeah, look at that. That's beautiful.
Yeah.
John, the perpendiculars, are those retaining walls?
Yeah, just that was
Is that just conceptual at this
not
point?
watching, but that was a bad idea. Yeah, no, the retaining walls will follow the edge of the walkway.
Okay.
Okay.
So we are looking for a little a approval, which to me means a an approval with a condition to,
Approval with an asterisk.
and the asterisk is that we can build all this stuff, but no one who works under any of these roofs will give us a CO unless we have, in the meantime, come back and gotten a big A
Done this all
approval,
again.
design approval. I think, though, we have to make a lot of planning. Not only do we need a building permit, we need enough guidance to continue to make planning decisions. So I think we need at least really a conceptual approval, which I think would be similar to the discussion we had at design review. If there's anything you hate, tell us. If you basically like it, tell us. And if there are particular details that you want to see, in addition to the particular details that design review cares about, tell us so that we can be mindful of that.
Tell us.
What I
She
think
loves
would-
it.
What I think would be important, so some of the conversation during ADR was leaning towards get rid of all the blocks, get rid of the benches, just make it very simple and wide, the way some of the other ADA ramps are
You're
that are on
talking
Main Street.
Eagle Square.
Eagle Square, correct. And so instead of making it 5 feet and having all these different elements, make it 6 feet or as wide as you can, and make some of those elements very tiny, maybe 6 inches or 4, I don't even remember, but very tiny, or eliminate them all together and just make it very basic the way all the other ramps are to allow more space for walking, because the feeling was that 5 feet was too narrow, which is a pretty major different direction from what they're proposing. And so I think it would be helpful for the board to weigh in. Are you more in favor of this, you know, with the granite blocks and the benches, which has a little bit more, I don't know, texture to it?
Yeah.
It's a little bit more, it makes it much smaller and tighter, but it has a bit more of a, I don't know, flair or a, you know, being across from the Capitol, having
Right, we see this as
grandiose.
being, you know, a series of, you know, bench height. You know, we need some, like elsewhere on Main Street, whenever we elevate one section of the sidewalk, there has to be some delineation so people don't, you know,
Yeah.
fall off the
Right.
edge.
Just think
That's
Bagel
been-
Works headed towards
That's
Dos
been done,
Amigos.
at Bagel Works by these low railings. Not a big fan. Our view was, instead of doing the low railing,
Make them a bench.
make it a bench,
Yeah.
you know, 20 inches high.
Right.
Sit and watch the Memorial Day Parade, you know, sit there for market days. You
Right.
know,
Makes
the
much
bench
more
is the point kind of thing. So, I mean, there was some discussion about ADR. I guess the one thing I'd say about ADR, since, you know, there were a lot of comments, I don't think there was ever, other than the approval, there were a lot of, some views, I don't know.
Well, I felt like the conversation started to veer strongly towards this notion of eliminating things, and so that's why I think that it would be important to have feedback from the board on if that's a direction that, because next time they come back, it might be, well, ADR,
Too
you
late.
know, unanimously agrees that they should just eliminate all that stuff and have it
Right.
just
Yeah.
be, you
So,
know.
so my big objection, and I really feel strongly that we need no stairs on the space at all. And I understand the whole reason why you got the stairs, and I understand the stairs that are at the end. So if you, just like on the Bagel Works side, I mean, when we first did that, you know, you came right off, people were dropping right off the end of it because they didn't see the steps. They fell right off the end of the steps. They put rails up, they put darker concrete, you know, darker pads on, you know, they tried to do it. From a design perspective, I'd give up something to say, let's start all the way out at the brick and say, okay, we've got all the way to the curb, if you looked all the way to the curb, and come all the way to the front of the facade of the building, how do you make that ADA accessible and not have a step on the left or the right? You can still have the steps in the front, but how do you make it, you know, could you do it with small ramps to come up on either side? Some way to figure
Not
it
have
out.
this step here.
And not have the step there. I mean, that's if you're starting to walk, you're in a wheelchair, you're walking all the way down and you don't know, you're gonna just be walking down Main Street thinking you're going to wherever at the other end, you're gonna run into a roadblock, you're gonna turn around and walk all the way back and come back. That's my only
Yeah.
visual piece of it. You don't have a sign that says
Here's what I'd say.
wheelchairs this
We
way. I mean,
have
you don't want
that, we have that condition in many places.
Yeah, I know.
mean, Remy's ramp starts on one end.
I know,
boom, and a
15
stair.
feet on the other end.
Bagel Works does the same thing. It's perfectly fine with me if someone wants to give us a waiver and we ramp from there to there. It's just not going to be, the required slope. I mean, we can.
How far off do you think the slope would be? What's it supposed to be, 12 to 1? What's
It's
the,
one on.
We can put a ring there.
112. One thing, John, with the slope, depending on what the slope would be, if you have the ADA access from the other side, you might meet the ADA requirements and still be able to put a ramp there that's not ADA compliant because they have the access from the other side. So that
just go
may,
shooting down the other end in a wheelchair, but the points, I mean, if it's not too far.
Charge,
So
too
you've
much
got,
ride.
so John, just so
I'd
everybody.
like there to be a ramp there, John.
So everybody,
Yeah.
so if you had ADA compliance on one end, you may not have to have ADA compliance on the other end. You might draw the ire of the Disabilities Rights Center or somebody in the sense that you can't put that there because people are gonna think it's a regular ramp, they're gonna go shooting down off of it. But is the issue on the stairs that you don't have enough space going to the left? Or is it if you pull it back farther, you're gonna impede on one of the storefront openings?
That's the storefront right there, so that's a limiting.
Okay, so you got that much space to go to the end of your
And there literally
space.
isn't a door front here, so that dimension right there, that's all I've got to work with.
What's to the left, can you go, is there a picture that you can show that's what's to the left of that building right now?
Liberty Utilities.
It's,
Yeah,
is it a
it's-
door opening?
Yes,
It's right
right
there,
there.
let's go back.
So
I can go from there to there.
And there's issues underneath that space too, right? I mean, you can't, you got something that comes out underneath
Something
it.
here.
Yeah.
But it's not here, I don't believe.
We can look into that.
I'm just, that's my only concern, because I know we did, whether it's there on the Bagel Works building or not, it's probably a mistake in the sense of
If we
the
can do that,
process.
I'd rather ramp it at that point.
And if you can get, if you can get to a 10-1 or something on the pitch, whatever the pitch might be, as long as it's close
It's really purely a
Can-
math problem. It's whatever that elevation is compared to that
to
and
that,
that distance.
and that's the distance.
We can't make that up.
You can't make up any distance, you can't make the front of that storefront any lower, can you? That granite that's there doesn't go any, you
Because
can't
I
magically
created
take out, you
accessibility
can't
issues.
magically take out a couple inches of granite on that, okay?
Right, that's why it's there.
Go ahead, Byron.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. All good points. I won't weigh in on whether there should be a stair there or a ramp. However, I will weigh in and say that to the extent that you can integrate the benches and whatnot, I think that's a great idea. Some of the original design for the Main Street project integrated, functional seating in the garden plantings, for example, and I like that idea. The only other comment I would make, two comments. First of all, I think this is an exciting project,
Yeah.
and thank you both for engaging in this, really an important corner of downtown. My only other comment I would make is, I think everyone knows that I'm very enthusiastic about trying to uplight some of our historic facades. So to speak to the chairman's comment earlier, anything that can be done to do that tastefully, I would like to see. Certainly because this building can really lead the way in that regard. And it is, prominent. It's right opposite the State House, which is well lit. The memorial arch to our war dead, and the memorial to, and the Franklin Pierce statue, and the memorial to the war dead from World War II on, are all uplit very tastefully. And I think that whatever could be done with the Eagle Hotel would complement that lighting. So,
Can you go back to the slide that showed the entrance that we were just looking at?
Picture.
So, keep going back. That one. So, if I remember on the Eagle Square Deli, if you walk up and go in, you've got space to the left and space to the right. If you're gonna replace those storefronts and there's nothing there, could you replace the storefront entrance to the right? Could you push it over to the first bay and then give you an extra 4 feet of distance on the run? I mean, I understand the aesthetics,
I think we'll get hung at design
of,
review by,
Being
getting.
asymmetrical.
it wouldn't be
I
asymmetrical.
think the symmetry
Is important enough?
Building,
Okay,
yeah.
okay. Okay.
But we'll look at we prefer a ramp, we'll look at what that rate is and whether, because of the accessibility meeting code on the other end, whether we can get a waiver and talk to Disability Rights Council.
That's great.
We can look at putting in, textured walkways to those metal, what do you call the plates, Brian? that, we have sidewalks near our house that are like this, but they have those sort of pebbles.
Detectable warnings.
Yeah. I don't know if there's a way to, if we can do a non-compliant ramp and somehow put a railing and maybe some alert sign or whatever, I'd rather have it than step.
COB.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a existing conditions element there, and if you have it on the other side, from my experience on that, I think you probably would meet it. We just wouldn't want to see that other ramp be too extreme, because we do have winter conditions and things like that, so we don't want to slipping on it, but it may be a benefit to the storefront owners too, because if they need to get a dolly up there or something, it's better to go ramp
There's no
and
report or
upstairs.
anything on this. So what do we have to do?
One other thing just to pay attention to when you look at that, and I don't know exactly what those door configurations are, but in some cases, depending on how the door swings and how the person would access that, you might need 60 inches. I think a lot of those doors are set back some, but as you're working through that with your designers, I'm sure they'll pay attention to that, but that might dictate a minimum width.
Yeah. One of the nice things is that all the doors, they are set back in the entrance, so
Should be okay.
about 36 inches. So the door swing does not extend beyond the plane of the building. More seating.
So,
Got it.
any other questions?
So I didn't get the clear indication from the board on the bench versus no bench.
Yeah, good point.
Just think about it, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the low metal walls like you see out in front of.
Would there be any planting?
Works where-
Any plantings on the bench wall? Probably not. No, it's not wide enough.
Oh, why not?
No, I think the benches would be great.
You know my opinion.
I agree.
I think the benches would be great.
And there are a lot in this design, even if we had stairs, there are a lot of benches.
So, and access for, say, again, for those two food establishments, they'd be able to utilize, you're gonna make available in the portico space, tables and sitting areas inside that portico, whatever you call it, the entryway or the plaza space.
Yeah, yes.
And part of the thinking is that end of town is, when we did the Main Street project, it's narrow. We don't, all the space for that's over in front of the arch.
Yeah.
As it was designed, so there's a real disadvantage at that end of street.
I mean,
So
there
the
is
idea-
also, space
There's a
for a
little
few
space
tables
there.
there. But yes, we will make the plaza space available. And the lobby too.
My recommendation from hearing what the board's saying and hearing everything ADR said is I would explore the steps, no steps option to see if that gives you a little more room, maybe gets you to 5 1/4 or 5 1/2, and then maybe to explore making, instead of 1 foot, making them 8 inches, or, instead of having a full 12, I think you have full 12 inches for the benches, correct?
I think the benches, the seating was actually wider than.
16 inches or something.
Yeah.
So I would just explore making them narrower and see if it seems like it would work or not.
How does this conform with the Main Street guide where we've got a 6 foot
There's a 6
clear
foot
space walkway?
There's a
So
6 foot clear zone next to it.
6 foot is all of that second, second
From
pad.
that line
Correct.
to that middle seam, that's
6 feet.
That's
That's
all of
zone
that
B.
6 feet.
So the ramp is gonna be in zone A.
So you're
Right.
gonna put a bench in and a ramp inside that
Exactly.
first space? That's a
the
lot.
point. That's the point.
That's a lot.
well, it can be.
So it's a 4 foot, right now it's only 4 feet. So it's a 4 foot through ramp,
Right.
which is pretty narrow. And then you have 2 feet that they're using for bench/steps. So just, I guess, see what it
See if we
looks
can
like.
slim that up.
See if you can,
Yeah.
right.
Good idea.
Okay, anything else?
I have something.
Yes, Teresa?
I think this is exciting. I think I like the whole concept. I happen to like your colored balconies too.
One vote.
Just one vote.
I got every Revolut 2 that starts at 3,
I was just in-
4.
I was in
Revolutions
Portugal,
start
and
this
they-
way.
They are good.
Someone might
Ask-
see you as
ask-
revolutionary.
Ask Liz Hingan, we saw some good.
I'm gonna have a
colored
hard time,
balconies.
I'm gonna have a hard time on colored balconies, but.
Well, we were talking
get you
about-
there.
we're not
We can
talking
vote
about
'em out.
neon, but I think it's exciting, and I'd like to move the question forward to say we give.
Okay,
we
let
give-
me ask the question
Okay, you
first.
ask the
So I'll ask the
question,
question. Any other comments? Any other comments from the board?
We're looking at a conceptual.
Yeah, you guys are already designing the balconies. So what we need to do here is we need to grant approval of the plan that we've been presented subsequent to the condition that the applicant come back to ADR and come back to the planning board before any certificate of occupancies are
Correct.
issued. Did I say that right?
Perfect.
Perfect.
So moved.
So it's for the record, so you've made that,
I
you
just
can,
moved it.
move that motion.
Second.
And that's been seconded, Matt, seconded it.
Fire grenade if you
Suzanne
want.
seconded, everybody seconded.
Matt can second, let Matt second.
Okay, so all those in favor? Aye. Opposed? That motion carries. So that gives you your stamp of approval, gentlemen, so now the work is on your heads.
There's been a lot of work so far.
Yes, it looks like you have.
Thank you.
Okay, so
Thank
you're
you.
good to go. Thank you very much. You want to stick around for anything else, Mr. Chorlian? No?
But I almost decided to come up and help Ari, but I love it.
Yeah. Just give
He
Ari.
is right, though. I'll tell you, in January, I had 2 people call me up and say, "My God, you put that courthouse up so quickly. We only had concrete in the ground." I go, "What do you mean? You've been out looking at the foundations?"
So let me ask
They
you-
said, "No, that's beautiful." But I said, "This has been there 100
No, I've had the
years."
same experience. Where did that building come from?
So is the parking lot at exactly the same height that it was presented to us
Yeah.
at?
Yeah, no, they're fussy about you doing it the way.
Well, yeah, I know, I believe me, we've had issues, but it just seems like it's lower. It just doesn't seem as imposing as it was when we looked at the plans. I thought, right, David, am I right? I mean, I
drive
walked
by there,
there the other day, and it's very,
we all
I thought it was
envisioned
gonna be way over my head.
much higher.
Yeah.
No,
So-
it works well. I mean,
didn't, yeah.
we had to put a belt and the suspenders because we have the wooden retaining rails so cars, and then we had to put that little black fence, that ornamental fence, that would have been
Yeah,
my choice because I like the unobstructed view. The only contribution I made whatsoever, the design of the original brick colors for the new building weren't going to relate to the existing courthouse, and it was pretty apparent that once you got rid of the administration building and the 4 big trees that were out front, that you saw that color, and the new courthouse, even though the judiciary wanted a very modern building to signify that they're keeping up with the times, they do relate like a campus, and it really.
was it presented originally with a glass facade on the front of the curved front of the building? I know it, okay, it always was. Just for some reason didn't
And we
think it
didn't
was.
change it.
Thank you, guys.
Not making
Thank you,
changes
have a good
after the
night.
fact.
That was a field decision, artist decision.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, let's move on to item 9 on our agenda. We've got a packed house here, ready for us to address item number 9. Oh, no, item number 8, I'm sorry.
Number 8 is.
Item 8, let's read that into the record if we could.
The City of Concord requests review of a proposal to rezone land off Old Turnpike Road from open space residential to IN industrial. This is the old landfill site. The city would like to rezone this area IN to assist with the relocation of the fire training facility from the park over into this location. That's the immediate desire to do that. I think also this is a site that's been identified as potential for solar, and so if there ever is a solar proposal, it will avoid the issues that a lot of solar has had with the RO district, which is the lot coverage requirement. And so if you check out.
Got until 2025 to make the city 100%, right?
Yep.
Mr. Counselor, isn't that correct?
2050, I think.
2050, okay.
So,
30.
No.
2030, 2030.
2030. I knew it ended with 0.
Okay, Heather, go ahead, sorry.
It's okay, so if the existing zoning shows all in purple what is RO, and just across the street, you can see it's all IN. And so this proposal, in there, there's also this little piece that's IN, and it's just a lot of weird property line stuff going on there, and split zoning going on. If you'll look on, immediately adjacent to the RO, there's a lot of split zone parcels. I'm not sure how all that came about, but this cleans all of that up and creates the whole area is IN up till you get to the RM zone, and then you do have a split zone parcel. One of the goals for the code update that we're going through, the process of the zoning update, is to eliminate as much as possible split zoning on parcels. So we did this way specifically to eliminate a lot of the split zoning that was occurring there. And so I guess we would just ask for a motion to recommend approval to the city council.
So moved.
Second.
That motion's been made and seconded. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That motion carries. We will recommend that be pushed up to city council. And do we want to do a Concord Next code update?
Yeah, I actually had just gotten a flash drive from my office because I apologize that I'm not sure why the links
not linked.
are not showing up, but I think I might have left it over here with us. attempting to address these other technical difficulties.
What's the NHMA workshop, staff workshop item that's on here as well, while you're putting that on, if you can?
Yeah, it's not over here. I have no idea where it went.
Oh, Dupree just took it, I think.
He took it.
They might have.
Yeah, no, he did. He said, is this
They might
mine?
have taken it.
He did. He took it.
They did ask that.
It was red.
Oh,
Yes, he took it.
That's pretty funny. We were meant to leave early tonight.
Yes.
Well,
So you want to address
so-
that? We'll wait till the next meeting?
Yeah, let's wait till next.
Okay.
Okay, so let me just give you a little summary of the timeline here. We're hoping that codes consultants will come in September for their next visit, which is intended to be a confirmation of the vision, which we haven't got from them yet. So this week or next week, I'm supposed to get 2 more deliverables from them. This was a code assessment, which basically outlined their understanding of the issues with our code. And I'm going to send you tomorrow the link to the document and my staff summary. I'm very sorry that I don't know why the links didn't work, but I really want you to have access to that so that you can provide some feedback to the code assessment, which I will get to them ASAP. The next 2 documents are the community character analysis, which will lend itself towards the vision statement, and then the strategy report, which basically lays out how they're going to start to draft the code. And once those 3 documents have been submitted and reviewed by us and presented to council, they will start drafting the code, and they will basically summarize all that when they come in September. So hopefully in August, I will have all 3 of those documents so that you all can see them before they come in September, because the time is really getting short for us to give feedback and review these things. So again, I'll send you the link, I'll send you the documents. Feel free to give me any comment at any time. You know, you don't have to wait for the next planning board meeting to give feedback. So moving along, the NHMA, I was looking into continuing education for planning board members to sort of update on roles and responsibilities. So I came up with 2 options, basically. NHMA has a workshop. It's a 2-hour workshop that I think that we can get. I think you get 1 free, 1 a year, that they will come and put on. I think it's intended for more than just a small planning board. I think it's more intended for a community or multiple communities to come together, but we probably could get them to come and put it on for us if we wanted to do that. The other option is that OSI puts on, has a handbook, like a summary of the RSA's back, basically, a rules and procedures handbook for planning boards. And staff could put on a sort of a short summary during a planning board, at the end of a planning board meeting. So that might be more like a 20 or 30 minute thing that's kind of a brush up on what the RSA's say about planning versus a 2-hour thing. So I'm just kind of presenting the options to you to say, and I could also print out the OSI handbook and hand it out to everyone so you can have access to that. It's a very helpful summary of what the RSA say site plan and subdivision regulation is all about, and what we're required to do and what we're not required to do. So I will actually print you out all copies of that and bring them to the next meeting. But I just wanted to know what your interest might be in some of those different things.
Would that workshop be like what you and I went to?
Let's hope not. Because that was dreadful. That was a waste of time, so
That
we
was
won't say
all that we were there
all day on a
long.
Saturday, and it wasn't a
No,
good
this-
use of our time. I think, and I mentioned that to Heather, and she said, no, this would be a 2-hour, like here,
Yeah.
with question and answers, and that would be the most investment in time that we'd need to do, or we could look to the OSI stuff, which is the handbooks and the brochures, or the
Which
handbooks
I would
and
give you
the
anyway.
But that
PDFs.
doesn't answer our.
But that doesn't answer your questions,
Questions.
right?
And
So
NHM
I guess if we could get enough people to come, I think a 2-hour session would be,
I'd come.
we'd have an off meeting, maybe
Not on
do,
a Saturday.
no, an evening,
just maybe call a special meeting.
have a special planning board meeting off cycle and.
Yeah.
And have it available to us, available to other boards,
Back in the Barley House
ADR.
kind of thing?
Yeah. So if that's something, we can have Heather look into that and bring it back to us, that would
That'd
be
be
great.
good, yeah.
Yeah, they have a whole list of workshops to choose one, and the one that I would pick is the roles and responsibilities of planning board members.
Perfect. Okay, let's look into that.
I'm not saying that the handbook wouldn't be helpful to me.
No, well,
No, I will give
she'll
it to
get
you.
the handbook anyways,
But
but maybe a 2-hour, just
a
to have
2-hour
them
thing.
pepper them with questions, and it doesn't have to go 2 hours if we don't want it to,
Right.
so.
Right.
Okay, any other questions, concerns? If not, I think that brings us to any other business that may legally come before the board. If there's none, we will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Motion's been made and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion approves. We are adjourned.
Heather?
Bang. Would you leave your...